The Experiment by X-King Reaper 720X. Finally I was free, the beautiful meadow that is mine, until the walls collapsed. I was still in Aperture Science. The panels were turning and I found myself in my room again, from the very beginning. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Just the fact that I am back here was pain enough. I expected a knock at the door, for Wheatley to come through. After all, I thought since I'm back here, I might have to go through the whole thing once more. A voice was heard and it sounded like GLaDOS, except something changed. She sounded worried. I was kind to you. I covered things that you would not like to see. This experiment is just cruel. This woman is crazy. Good luck. This is a true goodbye, you monster, GLaDOS told me. I have no idea where her voice was coming from. It's time for a new experiment. Since you wanted to escape so bad, I think it's only fair to show what you have really been wandering in, a different voice said. It sounded like GLaDOS, but this voice had a slight accent, convincing me it was a different voice coming from someone else. The room I was in began to shake. As expected, I was headed for a place to land, which would begin my first test. I couldn't say a thing. I still couldn't speak. I jumped into the tiny chamber, but it was covered with blood. Two turrets were outside of the chamber I was in. Back to back, they were talking to each other. Oh no, does she see all of the— Quiet! It doesn't matter hiding it anymore. She'll find out soon. A tube came from above them and sucked the two turrets out of the room. Quiet, the strange voice said. The pre-recorded message did not play unlike my first time traveling amongst this place. The two portals opened, and I saw me in the first one. I couldn't see my face, though, just the back. I wonder when your breaking point shall be. All the silence and no faces are supposed to bother you, the woman said once more. GLaDOS said goodbye already, but what if it was just her speaking strangely? I went in the first chamber and I heard someone banging something with their fist. I looked to my left and saw there was a man trying to break the glass. I remember then, I was rising up on the elevator to the meadow. There was someone running in the background. This seems to be him, unless there are other people here besides me and that running person. I waved, but he ran away. There was a door already opened, and it led to an elevator, same as last time. I entered and the light turned off, and all of a sudden, a man came running into the darkness desperately, banging on the glass. He made no sound, but something seemed to have hit him on the head, and he passed out. The strange man was slowly carried away as I went down. The last thing I saw were two robots with different colored eyes, except each robot only had one. I remember the taller one having an orange eye and the shorter robot having a blue eye. All of a sudden, the elevator door stopped, and to my horror seemed to be loose from its surroundings. It fell for a long time with me inside. It crashed and glass pierced my skin. There were cuts and bruises all over my skin when I heard the voice again which said, "You look just like your kind, except you're alive." My eyesight cleared up a bit and noticed I was in a pit that fit the elevator. All of a sudden I heard Wheatley make a disgusting sound. He was screaming, "I was real! I was human!" It was all silent except for a gut-wrenching noise. I climbed out and there were conveyor belts transporting turrets into fire for their deaths. We never meant to hurt you. We were once real. We have brains and blood within us. Our bodies were just robotic, unlike the fleshy humans we once were. We failed the experiments and died. She recycled our parts, but I still feel the pain. There are some remains she forgot to use when creating this turret body I am in now. Also, I think the core you know as Wheatley is dead now, one of them told me. I looked behind me and a core surrounded by red and black laid there. I looked closer and identified it as blood and grease oil. I was also able to diagnose that this was Wheatley. GLaDOS really did go easy on you. She kept all of these awful images away from your mind. The inside of us is human. It's our outer appearance that curse us so. I've been stuck here for so long I forget if I'm really human or not. I'm probably not going to be recycled again. My body parts shall remain here, along with this body I was stuffed in. I have already failed many times in what I was created for. Just know that Bullets were shot and they pierced through his metal, ending his suffering. Turning around to prove the shooter to be the turret who was talking to me. It wasn't me, or at least, I don't think. Goodbye. He burned and the power went out. I heard gruntled noises and there was a figure. I couldn't tell if it was the man from before, but he was running towards me. He had a savage look in his eye. It was fearful and paralyzed me on the spot. When something pushed him to the ground, a huge light appeared from the ceiling, revealing that the man who just collapsed was in another room. The robot with the orange eye was standing over him. The way he stood gave him an intimidating expression. He turned away, and I noticed the orb that acted as his eye was not there anymore. It was just a socket, with a few yangling wires. Now his body was facing away from the man. Now he was looking at the robot with the blue eye cowering, "I'm a corner." He still had his eye. The tall robot approached him. His hand formed into a drill and he approached his companion and knelt in front of him, as to say sorry. "You care about your friend, now don't you, Peabody?" an unknown voice began to say. The kneeling robot lowered its head a little more. "This is for your own good, Atlas. You did tell your sister you didn't want to see any more of this. She still cares for you as much as she did when you two were human." All of a sudden, the tall robot known as Peabody raised her drill hand and jabbed into the eye of Atlas. As soon as the drill made contact, Atlas jolted up as his hand formed into a drill as well and tried to stop the drill of Peabody. 2 drills were close to his face now. Atlas succeeded and Peabody's drill fell off, and she collapsed to the floor with it. Atlas fell with his back dragging against the wall, as his eye slowly faded to black and fell out. As usual, I couldn't scream or utter a word. All of a sudden, gas surrounded me and I passed out. Later, I awoke to a different room. It was still all black when a single light focused on me. Stupid cores and turrets. They really shouldn't be talking. They've ruined this experiment. It was for science, but no. The purpose has died. I think it's time you see what you really are, what everything is, the voice told me. Let the experiment begin. Walls and a roof came around me, creating a long hallway. There were strange-looking mirrors on the walls, but the reflections that appeared seemed to be not real. I maintained a neutral expression, which contradicted what I was really feeling. A burning feeling to escape all of this madness. I was seeing red, hoping that somehow this will all just go. All this time you've been talking to these robots. Pawns of aperture science. You haven't seen any other humans, or at least I hope you haven't. Well, it's time for you to meet you, she said. In the distance appeared an actual light focused on a door. I ran to it, but when I got there I was tricked. The door was a convincing cardboard cutout and it fell on the floor, revealing a mirror. I looked and was horrified. My eyes were 2 empty sockets and my mouth was sewn shut. My mouth seemed that of a scarecrow. I was smiling due to the stitches, but really didn't want to smile. I tried to cry on my knees, but this face wouldn't let me. I screamed but couldn't. I cried but I'm unable to. I died inside but I'm still alive. Now it's time for another, the voice said. Another light shone, and the man banging on the glass before was clutched in a claw. A huge drill was on the floor, but one could still hold it in their hand. "Caroline, please stop," the man shouted. Thoughts spread around in my head. There is no one besides you now. Look at yourself. You have no emotion you feel but can't feel. Who are you to be alone? Who are you to let this man keep feeling? Give him the socketless eyes, the sewn mouth. Do all of that, and maybe you won't be so alone. There will be someone just like you. My thoughts were right. I approached him and grabbed the drill from the floor. Sadly, I noticed it was the one that fell off of Peabody's wrist. As I jabbed it into his eye and turned it on, the experiment was a success. That was the experiment. Final thoughts? The fan-made stories on this show almost always range from really good to just kinda bland. It's rare that we get one that is really bad. This was just awful. I don't feel like this was a story from my forum. It's overflowing with horrible punctuation, plot points that are usually red flags for reviewers, and massive leaps in logic. This story's punctuation is all over the place, and it makes it really hard to read. I really don't know how the story made it to the show with so little polish. At one point it talks about angling wires. Angling is not a word. I don't even know what the word was supposed to be. Hanging? Because that's not even close. What's an I'm a corner? 2 short sentences in a row start with now he, like it's someone describing what's going on to a 911 dispatcher from across the street or something. You have no emotion you feel you can't feel. What? Was there supposed to be a comma in there? Was it supposed to be, you have no emotion, you feel but can't feel? Or did the author get lost partway through the sentence and repeat something? That's not out of the realm of possibility, that's happened before. The examples of this stuff is so abundant that I can't even name a quarter of the instances of this. This is the worst proofread story we've ever had on the show. Please, if anyone is listening and interested in helping authors with proofreading these stories, please check out the description and click the link to the Creepypasta section of the forum and start proofreading. Midway through the story, there's a massive exposition dump where the robots just explain everything that's going on in detail, with no provocation. They just do it. It really takes you out of the story. Lastly, the ending makes absolutely no sense. If her eyes are empty sockets, how the fuck does she see anything? And what motivation does she have, whatsoever, of drilling out the eyes of who I presume to be Cave Johnson? The story tries to tell us that GLaDOS is trying to convince Chell that it'll make her feel less alone if he looks like her. But that doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever, both in the character of Chell and out. There's absolutely zero motivation to do that. The character just does it because the author wrote it. There's no rhyme or reason whatsoever. King Reaper, by all means keep making stories. You'll keep improving. Just because you've made a bad story doesn't mean you should stop. But I asked you if it was ready and you gave me a really iffy answer. I reminded you to read the story back to yourself out loud to make sure it didn't have any of these problems. And a message or two later you told me it was ready. You didn't read it out loud. If you had, you would have caught so many of these errors. Next time, please just take my suggestion. I'm giving it because I want to help you with your story. That's it for this creepypasta. Tune in again next Saturday when we tackle yet another story made and sent by the fans with Voice of the Reaper. If you want to write your own story, help peer edit a story, or even just read the stories early, check out the description where you'll find a link to the Creepypasta section of my forum. You'll also find a link to the playlist of every creepypasta rating I've done. If you're interested in keeping up with me on my blog posts, join my Facebook fan page linked below, and if you want to support me in what I do, check out the Patreon page in the description. Remember that if you want your story to be read on the show, you must stay active on the post on the forums, as well as read the forum rules. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, sweet dreams.